Wild Shape is the most unique aspect of any Druid, but doesn't it kinda suck now? With tons of changes from 5e and the new beasts in the monster manual, it's time for some survival of the fittest. No matter what kind of Druid you aim to be, you're gonna be using Wild Shape at least some of the time. Even though the feature has seen some pretty big changes and is no longer designed specifically for combat according to WotC, it still stands out as the flavor linchpin of the entire class. Without Wild Shape, the Druid would be little more than a wisdom-based wizard with a wilderness vibe. Meanwhile, I'm just struggling to keep my houseplants alive.
No, just say something!
Even so, I think I've identified the biggest part of what holds Wild Shape back in the 2024 edition. And no, it isn't the lack of hit points we get by transforming. At least, it's not that by itself. When a Druid Wild Shapes as a bonus action, they'll make use of all the beast stats except for their mental ability scores like Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. And as I'm sure many of you know, the Druid won't be using the beast's hit points either, and you'll just get temporary hit points equal to your Druid level instead. This on its own isn't quite so bad since something is better than nothing. But Druids also end up at the mercy of the DM in deciding what worn equipment will still function in their Wild Shape. Considering the standard set with base 5e, most DMs aren't going to allow your bonuses to armor class to carry over. That means that you're probably going to get stuck with something like an 11 or 12 AC in most forms that you take.
We'll close it.
This, combined with a D8 hit die and a lack of ranged attacks in Wild Shape, is going to be a huge problem, unless you're a Moon Druid that gets more AC and temp HP from their transformations. Again, WotC did stress that Wild Shape wasn't really designed for combat anymore. But then they also gave us features at 7th and 15th level that explicitly increase the damage of Wild Shape unless you just want slightly better cantrips. So which is it? Is Wild Shape for combat or is it not? I don't even think WotC knows the answer at this point. Regardless, I'd encourage you to speak to your DM about all this stuff. According to the rules, the decision to allow the use of equipment while in Wild Shape does lie with them, and even a slight boost to your AC with some leather armor and a shield truly goes a long way in fixing some of the mess that was left to us. I can tell you for sure that Druids in my games will be able to beef up their beasts with armor full stop. It just makes sense, and it's really fucking cool anyway. But that's really only half of the equation here. There are still a lot of pitfalls and easy mistakes that can leave you with a bad taste in your mouth. Not every beast stat block is Hakuna Matata after all. So let's start by taking a look at some CR0 beasts for the one part of Wild Shape that I was actually a fan of. From the moment you first reach level 2 and unlock your Wild Shape as a Druid, you'll be able to expend a use of the feature to summon a familiar. The Find Familiar spell is an absolutely incredible tool at all tiers of play, since it allows you to deftly scout ahead, offers some nice boons in combat, and even delivers touch range spells for you within 100 feet. Keeping in mind that these creatures will function almost exclusively as extra utility, I've picked out some options that work really well in a variety of scenarios, beginning with the bat.
I'd give her a ha and a hi-ya!
It really doesn't look like much with just one hit point and no extra skill proficiencies, but it does pack a 30-foot fly speed and a solid 60 feet of blind sight. That's sure to come in handy anytime you might find yourself in the dark of a dungeon, or the darkness spell specifically. Perhaps even you were the one that cast the darkness spell in the first place. It's not on the Druid spell list, but there are plenty of ways to get access to it, and sacrificing your bonus action to see through the eyes of your familiar will give you advantage to hit most enemies while they have disadvantage to hit you. What's more, based on how the darkness spell is worded, you could potentially cast darkness on a small object like a button or a marble, and then have the bat pick it up so it can move your darkness around without you debilitating your allies too heavily. There is a slight debate about rules as written versus rules as intended, but you get the idea. 60 feet of blind sight on a flying familiar is awesome. But you may want to consider using the octopus for a completely different reason. No, not that reason! If you're underwater, your octopus may be able to use its ink cloud reaction to heavily obscure an area when an enemy closes on you so that they have disadvantage on their attack. Or you can use their compression trait in or out of water to slip them through corridors as narrow as 1 inch or under door jams to get eyes on what lay beyond with decent bonuses to both perception and stealth. This could even be useful for bypassing certain areas of a dungeon if you wild shape into one so you can move yourself past obstacles. Then the owl is simply a classic. A 60-foot fly speed, 120 feet of dark vision, plus 5 bonuses to stealth and perception, and the ability to move without provoking opportunity attacks make this one hell of a scout. But I'd be willing to bet that you've never used a giant fire beetle before. Okay, maybe a big glowing bug that alerts enemies to your presence isn't exactly what you had in mind. But sometimes you just need a nice shiny target to attract any predators that might be lurking just around the bend. With a 30-foot climb speed, resistance to fire damage, and the ability to shed a little light in a 20-foot radius, it'll almost always amount to a sacrificial lamb or just a flavorful torch. If you want something less conspicuous, try the spider instead, but I think the fire beetle has more use case than people give it credit for. And keep in mind that while these familiars can't attack, any of these options can give you advantage on an attack by using the help action. That alone can be worth keeping a familiar around, and that's in addition to everything else you get out of the deal. Now, as we move into the CR 1/4 wild shapes we'd have access to starting at 2nd level, I wanted to keep a few things in mind. Some of these options are going to be used exclusively for damage dealing purposes, while others offer different useful abilities. It's all about having the right tool for the job and correctly assessing what's needed for each situation. And we'll start with a pretty blunt object in the board. This one might be a bit of a surprise pick for some of you, but let me explain what I like about it before you make any snap judgments. First off, a 40-foot movement speed is nothing to shake a stick at. And while it only has a +3 to hit on its gore attack, the attack will deal an average of 7 damage to medium creatures and knock them prone if we move at least 20 feet straight towards them first. There's no saving throw on that prone effect, and it'll give our allies the chance to strike with advantage on their turns too. We just have to land that attack. And to aid with that, the boar gets advantage on attack rolls while it's bloodied. Creatures are considered bloodied when they're at or below half hit points remaining, not including temporary HP. So I'd say this is a great wild shape to hang on to as a way to turn the tides of a battle after you've already been dealt a little damage. That way you can take full advantage of the situation. It's also worth noting that the elk stat block does offer some of the same benefits with a better hit chance, more movement speed, and a little more damage. But you won't get advantage if you're bloodied in that case. So if you're still looking healthy when you transform, you might want to take the shape of a giant venomous snake instead. These creatures have a 40-foot swim speed along with 10 feet of blind sight and a +2 to perception. A swim speed is already going to help us fill out our bag of tricks within this feature, but that close range blind sight can be really nice too. Although what we're really after here is the best damage dealing attack at this CR and a fantastic hit chance to go along with it. A +6 to hit at just level 2 is simply amazing, and it'll often result in about 10 average piercing and poison damage too. There's not much else here, so I'll leave it at that. It's very strong for this level. But damage isn't everything, and the giant centipede makes that abundantly clear. This beast has a 30-foot climb speed, 30 feet of blind sight, and a really nice debuff built right into its attack. Although the giant centipede's bite attack has only a +4 to hit and only deals an average of 4 piercing damage, it'll inflict the poison condition until the start of your next turn with no saving throw. Prone may also give disadvantage on attacks, but it can simply be removed by standing up. Sticking an enemy, especially a big one, with the poisoned condition is a really great defensive option in the early game. You might even be able to find some advantages yourself with all that climb speed and blind sight. However, sometimes you're locked into a combat with no hope of winning. In cases like these, no amount of CR 1/4 damage and debuff is going to help save you. You'll need a get out of jail free card. Oddly enough, I think the deer is a great answer. They've got 50 feet of movement speed, a nice +4 bonus to perception, and 60 feet of dark vision alongside a pretty lackluster attack. But with this one, you're not going to be attacking very often, if at all. What I like about the deer is the fact that it carries the agile trait so that it doesn't provoke opportunity attacks. So if you're ever in a really bad situation and just need to get the heck out of there, Dashing with 100 feet of movement as a deer is about as much of an eject button as you could ever ask for. Then once you reach level 4, you can swap some of your early options with some improved CR1 half beasts, starting with the ape. Aside from their 30-foot climb speed and bonuses to athletics and perception, what I'm really after here are the attack options. The ape can attack twice in one turn with its multi-attack for an average of 5 damage on each attack, or it can make one of the few ranged attacks in all of the wild shape options for an average of 10 damage. The attack is on a recharge, so you'll have to roll a 6 on a d6 at the start of your turn for the chance to use it again, but you may only need it every so often anyway. Plus, 2 attacks each turn will otherwise make our damage more consistent, and I won't complain about that. Alternatively, the crocodile can be an interesting choice near bodies of water since it has a 30-foot swim speed, a slight boost to stealth, and can hold its breath for up to an hour. Its bite attack has a +4 to hit and deals only 6 piercing damage, but it'll grapple and restrain medium creatures that it hits automatically. From there, you can hold your enemy in place while your allies make attacks at advantage on them, or you can be even more menacing. Given the chance, you might want to drag your prey underwater and attempt to suffocate them like the real crocs do. Then it won't matter how many hit points they have. With a deep enough body of water, it might not even matter if they escape the grapple at some point. Just swim back over and grab them again. Or if you're planning a more extensive trip underwater, you might want to have a look at the giant seahorse. While they're a lot less useful on land, they'll be able to breathe underwater and they'll give you a 40-foot swim speed. That, coupled with a bonus action that allows you to move half that distance without provoking opportunity attacks, will give you tons of maneuverability. And you'll definitely need it. The giant seahorse has a really nice attack that deals an average of 11 damage if you move 20 feet straight towards your target before you hit. Sure, it's got a niche use case, but you'll be happy to have it in those situations. Otherwise, on land, you're definitely going to want to make use of the warhorse. Their relatively empty stat block leaves them with 60 feet of movement and one of the best wild-shaped damage-dealing attacks. With a +6 to hit, a warhorse's hooves can deal an average of 14 damage and knock even large creatures prone if you move 20 feet straight towards them first. That's double the hit chance and double the damage that the boar might have been giving you before, but it does lack a reliable way to give itself advantage. Still, there's almost no way I don't take this. It's even better than some of the CR1 options like the giant octopus. Yes, we have another underwater option here, but this one does have some use case on land since it can hold its breath for up to an hour.
Do you mind telling us why that thing's in your pants?
It comes standard with 60 feet of swim speed and just 10 feet of regular movement, along with sizable bonuses to perception and stealth, 60 feet of dark vision, and an ink cloud reaction similar to what the regular octopus has from earlier. But its tentacle attack boasts a 10-foot reach that deals 10 average damage and automatically grapples and restrains medium creatures. Like with the crocodile, this could be a nice way to suffocate an enemy, or you can just enjoy the view while your teammates pummel the poor soul with advantage. Although you might actually have more success with the giant spider instead. Along with their 30 feet of spider climb, they'll grant you an easily overlooked ability that allows you to know the location of any other creature in contact with a web that you're touching. They'll also give you a nice +4 to perception and a whopping +7 to stealth, along with 60 feet of dark vision if you don't already have it. From there, the spider's bite does a respectable average of 14 piercing and poison damage with a +5 to hit, and the web can restrain an enemy within 60 feet of you against a DC 13 Dex save. Granted, that's not a high save to make, and the web can be escaped by just dealing a little damage to it. Still, there's a good chance you'll be able to steal away most of a creature's turn if they fail to save. And at worst, you can dish out some nice damage after sneaking along the ceiling unseen. However, this isn't the only CR1 creature I picked with an interesting attack option. Some of you may have seen that I selected the lion as my favorite beast stat block in the video where I covered my favorite new changes to the monsters. So it should come as no surprise that I think it's a great option for wild shape too. It's got 50 feet of movement speed, bonuses to perception and stealth, 60 feet of dark vision, pack tactics, and a somewhat situational running leap ability. What I find most appealing though is its ability to replace one of its 2 rend attacks with a roar that may frighten a creature within 15 feet against a DC 11 Wisdom save. The effect would only last until the start of our next turn, but Wisdom isn't a terrible save to target. And if you'd rather, you can always make use of those pack tactics for advantage while you reliably land about 14 damage every single turn. But there is one other CR1 creature that I didn't expect to make my list until I really started to consider how to run it strategically. and it might be the best option out of all of them. The giant toad is a fun but relatively unassuming beast option. They've got a 30-foot swim speed, 60 feet of dark vision, the ability to breathe both air and water, and the ability to jump really far. They also boast a bite attack with a +4 to hit that deals 10 average damage and automatically grapples medium creatures. So this all feels pretty standard, but it's what comes after the bite that I'm interested in. The giant toad can also swallow a creature it's grappling on a subsequent turn, making it restrained and blinded instead. That swallowed creature takes 3d6 acid damage at the end of each of your turns, and the creature can only escape if the toad is killed or they find some other way to get out. The downside here is that we can only swallow one creature at a time, and the escape DC for the initial grapple is only 12. So here's how we can get around that and effectively remove any medium creature from combat. Start by closing on your enemy and getting within 5 feet. Then ready an action to attack so that you can bite them just before your next turn. If they try to leave your range early, you'll make an opportunity attack on them instead. Assuming all goes well, you should be able to grapple your enemy without giving them a chance to escape so that you can swallow them without fail next turn. Then you get to just sit there and digest them. If you really want to hedge your bets, you can even just hold them in your gut until they finally knock you out. When that happens, they'll get regurgitated with the prone condition, and all your allies can have readied actions to attack them at advantage when they do. Is it foolproof? No. Is it flavorful? Well, that depends on if you like the taste of cultist. Now, also at this point, you'll be able to take flying wild shapes, but you may notice that I didn't recommend any. That's because there are no CR1 beasts with flying. If you're looking through the new monster manual, you may be surprised to find that the giant eagle and the giant vulture are both no longer considered beasts. It's sad and frustrating, but it seems like WotC only wants you to wild shape into a flying creature as a utility option and not as a combat option. So in that case, I'd highly recommend checking out the giant bat instead. It's the only large flying beast that I found, so you could still serve as a mount for your allies. And even though it's just a CR1/4 creature, you can always grapple and fly creatures into the air before throwing them back down to the ground. Now, I do also want to cover some options for moon druids that can transform into creatures up to CR6. But other druids may want to have a look at these too, since they'll be able to polymorph into any of these options starting at level 7. And polymorph even includes the beast's hit points in the form of temporary HP, so it's arguably even better. At CR2, you'd be doing yourself a disservice by not considering the Allosaurus. Hi, I'm Alex, and I'm not an Allosaurus, I'm an idiot. It's got a 60-foot movement speed, +5 to perception, and a pretty great 1-2 punch for a sort of multi-attack that can outdamage most other creatures at this level. The catch is that you'll need to move 30 feet towards a large or smaller target and land your claw attack first with just a +6 to hit. If you're successful, you'll deal an average of 8 damage and knock the creature prone as you then make a bite attack at advantage. When all is said and done, it'll add up to an average total of 23 damage, but it all depends on that first attack sticking, so be sure to have your familiar offer the help action so you get advantage there too. Then the giant scorpion is my pick for CR3. It's got 40 feet of movement, 60 feet of blind sight, and it's one of the rare creatures at this CR with 3 attacks as part of its multi-attack. Each of its claws will attack once, dealing 6 damage on average and grappling large or smaller creatures if you hit. Then you'll follow that up with a sting attack for 18 average piercing and poison damage for a sizable 30 average damage in total. Even though each attack has just a +5 hit chance, you'll still often remove multiple enemies from the battle with your grapples, and that's probably better than any of your other options. At CR4, it's everyone's favorite fantasy creature.
It's an oliphant.
No matter how you flavor it, this huge beast comes with a 40-foot movement speed to support a 20-foot charge mechanic within its gore attack that can knock even huge creatures prone. While you can only make one attempt at knocking prone each turn due to a lack of movement, you will still get 2 gorge attacks for an average of 15 damage each. Then, if you do manage to send your target tumbling, you can trample over them with a bonus action that deals an average of 17 damage against a DC 16 dex save for half damage. There's a good chance you'll find yourself dishing out about 47 damage every turn, a huge leap from what we had before. And that's before you take into account that prone creatures are good for your allies as well. Don't forget that. The Triceratops becomes available at CR5 when Moon Druids hit level 15 and should be landing their 2 Gorge attacks pretty reliably with a +9 to hit. Funny enough, the damage for its 2 attacks isn't all that different from the elephant, but it does have a faster movement speed of 50 feet, and it doesn't rely so heavily on chance and saving throws to land those attacks. It's not much better, but it should be more consistent at the end of the day. Then, as the pinnacle of Moon Druid wild shapes, the mammoth stands proud, like the dinosaurs and elephants had a baby.
I'm simply saying that life, finds a way.
The stat block should look pretty familiar to you since it's just a beefed up copy of the elephant with a higher hit chance, more damage, and a better saving throw on its trample. In the end, the damage rounds out to a chunky 65 average if everything lands. Now, if that doesn't sound like that much damage at 18th level, that's because there's a lot more that the Druid is capable of. And just because you look like an animal doesn't mean you have to smell like one. Stop by the Tabletop Beard website using the link in the description below and grab yourself some themed beard products including their Druid scent. You'll get 20% off your whole order with code CHAOS20 and you'll be helping to support the channel at the same time. If you're interested in how to take your Druid to the next level, make sure to watch my full Druid guide too. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel as you go, and until next time, go out there and make some chaos.